He offered her money to forget the pregnancy, but she chose love and disappeared. 5 years later, the billionaire CEO receives a phone call from a child who claims to be his daughter. Hello everyone, lovers of mystery and drama. If you have ever been underestimated, this is the story for you. A story of betrayal, redemption, and the power of claiming your own destiny. Like this video, subscribe, and get ready for a night that will change everything. Liam Sterling did not believe in messiness. Not in life, not in business, and especially not in relationships. He had structured his world to be clean, controlled, and self-sufficient. The top-floor office of Sterling Global reflected it perfectly. Glass walls, concrete floors, monochromatic art. His desk was spotless, his schedule tighter than a drum. His heart? Well, no one was allowed close enough to know if it even still responded. He had spent 2 decades building one of the country's most profitable biotech firms, turning failures into acquisitions and risks into dividends. He was a man the world admired, envied, and secretly feared. But no one truly knew him, and that was exactly the way he liked it. Years ago, in what now felt like a completely different lifetime, there had been an exception. Her name was Elena Santos. She was not a part of his business world. She was warmth, in a way he didn't understand at the time. She worked in interior design and loved the details that Liam never noticed. She laughed easily, cried openly, and treated love as something sacred, not strategic. They had met by accident, literally. When she spilled her coffee all over him in his building's lobby, he had been furious, and she had laughed. He hadn't laughed, but he had called her later anyway. What followed was not a traditional relationship. Liam was not built for intimacy, and Elena had sensed it. Still, she had stayed. For a while. Their moments were small but unforgettable. Long, late-night drives, wine-fueled debates about art versus science. Quiet mornings when she would hum while watering his plants. She never tried to fix him. She just offered him a space to be someone softer. And he had softened, briefly, until the moment she mentioned something real, something permanent. She told him she was pregnant. He stood there, frozen, looking at her across the kitchen island, as if she had spoken to him in a language he could not translate. It was late. City lights streamed through the windows behind her. He remembered the way her hands trembled slightly, but her voice held steady. She was not asking him for anything. She was just telling him the truth. And that, perhaps, was what scared him most of all. There was no manipulation, no drama, just honesty. His response was ice cold. He told her he wasn't ready, that it was irresponsible, that maybe it wasn't even his. The words came out fast and sharp, thrown like knives, before he even thought to hold them back. Elena didn't cry. She just stared at him for a long time and said, "I expected you to be better than this." Then she gathered her things and left. He did not stop her. He told himself it was the right thing to do, that it was better for both of them, that he was not built for fatherhood, for family, for feeling anything that could compromise his focus. And then, she was gone. He never heard from her again. There were no calls, no messages, no news. A small part of him, the part he kept under lock and key, had wondered once or twice what had happened, but he buried that curiosity under work, ambition, and the cold certainty. If she really needed me, she would have come back. That was his excuse. That was the lie he had told himself for years. He never told anyone about her, not his assistant, not his board, not even the therapist he saw once during a brief, silent breakdown. It was as if Elena Santos had never existed in his world, until one afternoon, sitting in the dark bar of a hotel after closing a European merger. He looked at his phone and saw a missed call from a number he didn't recognize. He ignored it. Then another call came in. The same number. He almost let it go to voicemail again until something, an instinct perhaps, made him answer. The voice on the other end was small. A child. "Hello, is this Mr. Liam Sterling?" His chest tightened. "Yes, who is this? My name is Emma. You don't know me." "But I'm your daughter." The world stopped. He did not speak. He could not. The child took a shaky breath and continued. "My mom, Elena, is in the hospital. She had an accident. The doctors say she's in the ICU. They needed an adult, and you're the only one I could think of." It was the first time in years that Liam Sterling felt something punch through the walls he had built. Panic, regret, and something else he could not name. But it felt as if everything he had tried to forget came crashing down on him all at once. He stood up, his heart hammering, and without a word, he walked out of the bar and straight to the airport. His life and his silence were finally breaking. Do you think a simple phone call can change a person's life, or that fate always finds us? Comment with your opinion. The flight back to New York felt endless, though it was barely 5 hours. Liam sat alone in a private cabin, an untouched drink in his hand, staring out the window where there was nothing to see but the night sky and 1,000 imagined versions of what might be waiting for him on the other side. He didn't sleep. He didn't speak. He barely moved. Every thought revolved around the voice on the phone, the small, brave voice of a child who had called him Dad, as if it were a word she was not used to saying aloud. He could still hear her breathing, still feel the tremble in her words when she said, "You're the only one I could think of." When he landed, it was nearly 2 in the morning. A black car was waiting for him at the curb, but the city outside the tinted windows felt strange, cold, like a life he had lived in another skin. The hospital was not far, but the drive felt stretched, each red light a new opportunity for his mind to throw him into another wave of guilt. He did not know what to expect when he arrived. He did not know what to say. All he knew was that if Elena did not survive, if this child was truly his, then he would never forgive himself for what he had walked away from. At the emergency entrance, a nurse met him. "Are you here to see Elena Santos?" she asked. She nodded and gestured for him to follow. "She's still in critical condition, stable for now. Internal bleeding, broken ribs, a punctured lung. They're monitoring her all night. She's sedated, but you can sit with her if you like." He hesitated for a second. "And her daughter?" The nurse's eyes softened. "She's in the waiting room. She's been there for hours. She didn't want to leave her mother, but we insisted she lie down. She's 6, very polite, very brave." The lights of the hallway flickered softly as they walked. The hospital was silent, almost eerily so, the kind of silence that has a weight of its own. When the nurse gestured to the waiting room, Liam stopped in the doorway. There, huddled on a vinyl bench that was too big for her, was a child. Her dark brown hair was pulled back into a loose ponytail, probably done by one of the nurses. Her blue eyes, the same icy blue he saw in the mirror every morning, were half closed. But she sat up the moment she heard footsteps. Her stuffed bunny rabbit was in her lap, worn and clearly well loved. She looked at him, not with fear, just with cautious interest. "Is that you?" she said softly, as if she were confirming it to herself. "Are you Liam Sterling?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, my mom." "You don't have to say it," he interrupted her gently. "I already know." Liam took a few steps closer and knelt to her eye level. He could see now that her features were not just similar. They were unmistakably his. The same angular cheekbones, the same eyebrows, the same look of quiet calculation, even at such a tender age. But there was something else, something warmer, that belonged only to Elena. "Emma," he said, trying her name aloud for the first time. "Is that what you're called?" She nodded, hugging the bunny tighter. "My mom told me about you. Not much, just that you were busy, and that it wasn't your fault." That hit him harder than any accusation. "She told you that?" "She said you probably weren't ready," Emma said. "But she never said mean things. I think she didn't want me to hate you." Liam looked down. Then he looked at her again. "You don't hate me?" Emma shrugged in a way that seemed too adult. "I don't know you yet, do I?" There was nothing he could say to that. She was right. He had no place yet in her world, no history, no memories, no moments, just absence. But now he was here, and even if it was too late, even if Elena never woke up to see him again, he could not walk away from this child with his eyes and her mother's heart. "I want to stay," he said in a low voice, "if that's okay with you." Emma looked at him for a long time. Then she gave him a small, single nod. "You can sit with her. She's been sleeping a long time." He got up and followed the nurse to the ICU. The room was dim, filled with the low hum of machines and the sterile smell of antiseptic. Elena lay motionless, pale and fragile under the layers of wires and tubes. She did not look like herself, but she was her. Liam sat down beside her, suddenly unsure of what to do with his hands. He reached for hers, hesitated, and finally rested his palm over her fingers. Her skin was cool, delicate, but alive. He leaned in and whispered, "I'm here. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry." She did not move. The machines continued to hum. He sat there for hours, not speaking again, just holding her hand, as if he were trying to pour into her all the years of silence he now wished he could take back. Outside the room, Emma waited. She did not cry. She just kept looking at the door as if she were waiting for the moment it would open and her mother would walk out, smiling as if nothing had happened. But Emma knew better. She was 6 years old, and she had already learned to expect that people who leave come back. This time, she just hoped one of them would stay. The morning light began to creep in through the narrow hospital windows, painting the sterile, white walls with a soft, golden hue. The first signs of dawn broke the long, dark silence of the night. But Liam had not moved from Elena's side. His suit jacket was draped over the back of the chair. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, and the skin beneath his eyes had darkened with exhaustion. He had spent the entire night watching her breathe, counting the slow rise and fall of her chest, listening to the quiet symphony of the machines that kept her alive. Every sound, every change in her pulse on the monitor, put him on edge. This was not the world he understood. Here, power meant nothing. Influence meant nothing. All he could do was sit, wait, and wish she would open her eyes again. A soft tap came from the doorway. He turned and saw Emma still holding her bunny, standing there barefoot with a nurse behind her. Her clothes were wrinkled from sleep, and her hair stuck up in all directions, but she stared at him with her blue eyes, unblinking. The nurse spoke softly, saying Emma had asked to see her mother. Liam quickly got up and offered her his seat without thinking, but Emma shook her head and instead walked closer to him. She said nothing, just reached out and took his hand, as if they had done it 1,000 times before. "I don't want to sit," she whispered. "I just want to stand beside her." So together they stood, father and daughter, watching the woman who had connected them both in the most painful and beautiful way imaginable. Emma did not cry. She was not disturbed by the wires or the bandages. She just stood very still, holding Liam's hand as if it were the only anchor she had left. After a while, the nurse gently guided her out of the room again, promising her pancakes if she went to the cafeteria. Emma looked once at her mother, then was gone down the hallway. Liam did not follow her this time. Instead, he finally allowed himself to collapse back into the chair. The silence in the room returned, but now it felt heavier, almost suffocating. His thoughts spun relentlessly. What if Elena never woke up? What if Emma had no one else? Could he? Would he? Would he be enough for her? And if Elena did wake up, what was she going to want from him? Forgiveness? Distance? Nothing at all? He realized how little he really knew about the woman who lay unconscious beside him. He had known parts of her once. Her laugh, the way she used to sing while she cooked, how she always had a plant she was trying not to kill. But he did not know who she had become in the 6 years since he had last seen her. Who had she become as a mother? What dreams had she let go of? What had she built in his absence? And why had she never tried to find him? That question was the deepest one of all. Later that day, the doctor finally came in. Liam stood up immediately, his heart in his throat. The man was calm, professional, and cautious. He explained that Elena's condition had stabilized, but she remained in a coma. There was no obvious brain damage on the scans, but they did not know when or if she would wake up. It could be hours, days, weeks. There was no way to tell. The doctor left, and Liam sat down again, trying to breathe. She was alive, but she was not there. And until she came back, he was standing in a fault line between two lives. One, in which he was a distant, emotionally detached CEO who had made all the right moves on paper, and one in which he had a daughter, a woman, whom he had broken, and a chance to become someone completely different. He left the room only once that afternoon to sit with Emma in the hospital's small garden courtyard. She sat cross-legged on a bench, her bunny tucked into her lap, nibbling on a granola bar the nurse had given her. She looked at him once, then back at the flowers in silence. After a few minutes, she said in a low voice, "I think she's still in there." Liam turned to her, unsure of what she meant. "Mom," Emma continued, "even if she's not talking yet, she always knows when I'm near. She used to say that's how love works. It's like light. You don't always see where it comes from, but it makes everything warm." Liam swallowed hard, unsure if he could hold himself together under the weight of that simple wisdom. This small child had grown up with a warmth he had never learned to give, and somehow he had not lost it. "You're very smart," he said, struggling to find the right words. She looked at him again. "You were too, but I think you forgot." He did not know whether to laugh or cry, maybe both. They sat like that, until the shadows grew long over the pavement. When she leaned her head against his arm and yawned, he put his arm around her carefully, unsure if it was allowed, unsure if he was worthy. But she did not pull away. That night, he found a small hotel near the hospital. Not a 5-star suite, but a quiet place where he could think. He did not sleep much. Instead, he opened his laptop and began reading everything he could find on child custody, guardianship, and trauma recovery. He made calls, private doctors, legal teams, child psychologists. Not to fix something, not this time, but to be ready for what came next. For the first time in his life, Liam Sterling did not want control. He just wanted to be present. He just wanted her to wake up. 3 days passed. The hospital became a strange, sterile, unfamiliar sort of home, but now etched into Liam's every thought. Each morning, he would arrive early to slip quietly into Elena's ICU room before the nurses changed her IVs or checked her vitals. He would sit in the same chair, holding her hand, talking to her in low, steady tones. He would talk about anything that came to his head. Memories of their time together, The way Emma smiled in her sleep. The weather. Even what he had for lunch the day before. He did not know if she could hear him, but he believed that maybe somewhere, buried beneath the silence, she was listening. That belief kept him going. Emma adjusted faster than he expected. She had always been an adaptable child. Elena had clearly raised her to be strong and independent. But there was something heartbreaking in the ease with which she adapted to this new routine. She did not ask when they were going home. She did not cry when the nurses inserted new tubes into her mother's arm. She simply watched, learned the names of every machine in the room, and waited. That waiting aged her in a way that Liam had not anticipated. She was only 6, but she acted like someone who had already experienced more than most adults. One afternoon, while they were in the hospital cafeteria, Emma sat across from him, her chocolate milk untouched, and her eyes fixed on a crumpled paper napkin she was folding into a strange shape. After a long pause, she said without looking up, "You're different from what I imagined." He looked at her, startled. "Different how?" "I thought you would be mean," she said simply. "Mom always said you were strong, but I thought that meant cold." Liam wanted to argue, but what would he say? That he wasn't cold? That he hadn't walked away when Elena needed him most? He could not lie to this child who had done nothing to deserve half-truths. So instead, he nodded. "I was cold for a long time." Emma finally looked at him, as if she were studying him for signs of weakness or honesty. "Are you still?" He considered the question. "Not when I'm with you." She seemed satisfied with that answer, and returned to folding the napkin. A few minutes later, she pushed it across the table. "It's a bird. You have to make a wish and let it go." "What did you wish for?" he asked softly. She smiled, but the smile did not reach her eyes. "That she wakes up." Later that night, as Liam sat by Elena's side again, the doctor came in with a clipboard. His face was unreadable, which always meant something complicated. "We're going to try to reduce the sedation tonight," he explained, "to see if her brain starts to respond on its own. It's a slow process, but it's the first real step toward recovery." Liam sat motionless, processing the information. "So she might wake up?" "Possibly. We can't guarantee how quickly, but we are optimistic." Optimism was not a word Liam had allowed himself to believe in for a long time. He thanked the doctor and stayed even later than usual, staring at Elena's still face and wondering what she would say when she opened her eyes. Would she be angry? Frightened? Would she want him to leave despite everything he had tried to do since the accident? He did not know, but he was prepared to face it. That night, after he had walked Emma back to the guest room the nurses had set up for her, she asked him a question he did not expect. "If she doesn't wake up, do I get to stay with you?" The question hit him like a punch in the chest. He knelt beside her, searching her eyes. "Do you want to?" She hesitated. "I don't know. I don't really know you, but I don't want to go with strangers." "You never have to," he said immediately. "I promise you, no matter what happens, I'll be here. You're not alone." She nodded slowly, but did not say anything more. That night, when Liam returned to his hotel, he contacted his lawyers and began preparing for guardianship. He did not know how long Elena would be unconscious, but he needed to be ready. Not because it was a legal requirement, but because Emma needed someone, and he wanted to be that person. No longer out of guilt, but out of choice. The next morning, when he returned to the ICU, something was different. The room was quieter. The nurses were still. And Elena? Her eyes were open. Not fully focused, not fully aware, but open. Liam did not breathe for 10 full seconds. Then, one of her fingers twitched beneath his hand. "Elena," he said, his voice raw and shaking. Her lips moved slightly. Only a sound escaped, but the effort was there. A murmur, a breath. She was coming back. And for the first time in years, Liam Sterling felt something close to hope, growing in the rubble of his past. What do you think of Emma's decision to stay with Liam? Was it an act of faith or the result of a desperate need? Leave your opinion in the comments. A new season, the days that followed Elena's awakening were fragile and delicate, as if the whole world had been transferred to a thin sheet of glass that might shatter under the weight of the wrong word or gesture. Her eyes, though open, were slow to adjust, not just to light or movement, but to the reality she had re-entered. It was a while before she could speak in full sentences. The first few days were filled with whispered questions, soft blinks, confusion, and silent tears that ran down her temples when no one thought she noticed. Her body had endured trauma, but so had her spirit, and the sight of Liam sitting by her bedside day after day, caring for her and her daughter, seemed to confuse her more than anything else. The first time they were alone, she turned her head slightly and looked at him for a long time, her voice raspy and barely audible. "Why are you here? Why are you?" He didn't answer immediately. There was no easy sentence that could explain what had changed in him. "Emma called me," he said finally. "She told me what happened. I got on the first flight back." Her eyes searched his face for some trace of the man she remembered. "You didn't come for 6 years," she whispered, her voice raw and thick. "I know," he said, "and I was wrong about everything." She looked away. "I didn't tell you. I should have, but I didn't. I was afraid of what you would say, how you would look at her." "I don't blame you," he said. "I didn't give you any reason to trust me. I was afraid back then. I thought love was a liability. I thought children were going to break the life I had built. I was wrong." She blinked slowly. The corners of her mouth trembled, though no emotion fully formed. "She's everything. I know that now," he responded. For the next few days, their conversations remained careful, cautious, as if they were walking on old glass. Liam stayed at the hospital, even when she told him it wasn't necessary. He would bring Emma every morning and take her home every evening. He asked for nothing in return, no absolution, no permission, just the chance to be near. Emma's presence helped Elena heal in a way no medication could. Her laughter in the hospital hallways, the small songs she would sing while she drew by her mother's bedside, her way of explaining to the nurses what each button on the IV machine was for. These moments brought Elena back to life, with a surprising swiftness, but it was Emma's comfort with Liam that surprised Elena most. Emma would hold his hand. She would climb into his lap, unasked. She would even rest her head on his shoulder, as if she had always belonged there. And maybe, without realizing it, she did. One afternoon, after Emma had fallen asleep in the corner of the room, her bunny pressed under her chin, Elena addressed Liam. Her voice was stronger now, though still quiet. "She trusts you. I'm still learning to deserve that," he responded. "She talks about you like you were always here. I think she wanted me to be, even before she knew who I was." Elena did not speak for a while. She just stared at Emma, watching her chest rise and fall with the steady rhythm of sleep. "She's strong," she said finally, "but it's not fair that she had to be." Liam nodded, swallowing hard. "I want to fix it, not with words, not with promises, just with time, effort, by being present, by being." Elena turned her head to him, and for the first time since she had woken up, her expression softened, less defensive. "You're not the man I left behind." "I'm trying not to be." She nodded slightly, as if accepting it for now. In the following weeks, Elena slowly transitioned out of the ICU. Liam helped arrange her physical therapy, consulted with doctors, hired a private nurse for home care for when she was discharged, and never once asked to take control. He did not come with grand gestures. He simply stayed. A constant presence. One day, Elena returned home. The first time she walked through the door of her modest apartment, her legs shaky, Emma grabbed her around the waist and said, "Now it feels like home again." Elena cried for the first time since the accident. Liam did not move back in. He didn't suggest it, but he was there almost every morning. He would make breakfast, take Emma to school. He would help Elena get dressed when her joints were too sore to do it herself. He would sit on the floor and put together puzzles with Emma, despite never having touched one before. He would fold the laundry. He learned how Elena liked her coffee. Slowly and carefully, he wove himself into their daily lives, not as a stranger demanding a place, but as someone humbly asking to earn it. The people around them noticed. The neighbors, the teachers, even Elena's mother, who had visited once with suspicion in her eyes, now looked at Liam with a quiet respect. He wasn't there out of obligation. He was there out of devotion. One quiet evening, weeks after her return home, Elena found herself sitting beside him in the small backyard. The stars above were soft and pale, and the air smelled of lilacs. Emma was sleeping inside. Her laughter still faintly echoed through the screen door. "Do you miss your old life?" Elena asked him. He did not have to think. "No. I was lonely, but I didn't know it." She looked at him for a long time. "You know this isn't going to be easy, right? This isn't a temporary fix." "I'm not here to fix it," he said. "I'm here to stay." And for the first time, she believed him. Do you think Elena should completely forgive Liam after what he did? A new chapter. Autumn arrived quietly, as it always did in New York, slipping in under the breath of summer and casting a cool quiet over the city. The trees began to shed their green for gold. The light shifted to something softer, and the wind carried with it the scent of change. For Liam, the season felt symbolic, as if his life had entered a completely new chapter, one that did not revolve around quarterly projections or investment calls, but around school lunches, sleepy-eyed mornings, and quiet dinners that left the house smelling of cinnamon and roasted apples. It was uncharted territory, but he welcomed it. Emma had begun to thrive in ways that Liam hadn't even realized were possible. Her drawings became more colorful, her laughter more frequent, her confidence more visible. She no longer sought his approval, as if she were testing him. She just assumed he was there. One Saturday morning, she climbed into bed between him and Elena with her bunny and a handful of cereal. Her hair was a wild mess, and her feet were freezing. Neither of the adults said a word, but when she fell asleep draped over their legs, Liam looked at Elena, who just smiled, with silent tears in her eyes. It was a peace neither of them had thought they would ever find again. But peace did not mean the past had disappeared. One afternoon, Liam was called into a parent-teacher conference. Emma had gotten into an argument with another child who had made a comment about her not having a real father. The words came from a place of childish ignorance, not malice, but they had touched something deep inside of Emma. She had yelled, pushed a chair, and told the boy that her father was real because he showed up, even when it was hard. Liam listened as the teacher recounted the incident, a mix of pride and pain clenching his stomach. Afterward, as they walked to the car, Emma kicked leaves without looking up. He knelt beside her and asked her softly if she wanted to talk about it. She was quiet at first, then she mumbled, "I know you weren't there before, but I don't want people to think you're not my dad." He took her hand in both of his and said, "Emma, anyone who sees us for 5 seconds will know you are mine, and I don't care what label they use. I just want to be there for you every day, always." She nodded and hugged him tightly, burying her face in his jacket. That hug stayed with him for days. Meanwhile, Elena was making progress. Her recovery was steady and physical therapy helped, but there were also setbacks. She had good days where she would joke, cook, and laugh at Liam's horrible laundry folding techniques. And she had days where she couldn't get up without help, and she refused to let Emma see her struggle. On those days, Liam would step in silently. He never made her feel small. He just did what was necessary, rubbing her legs, carrying her from one room to another, massaging her shoulders as she pretended to swipe at her phone with dry eyes. One evening, as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, she finally said, "I'm scared that I'm not the mom I used to be." Liam sat beside her and shook his head. "You won't be. And that's okay, because now you're stronger. The Emma from before doesn't need you. She needs you now, and so do I." She took his hand, and, for the first time since her accident, allowed herself to cry in front of him, without trying to pull away. As the holidays approached, Liam decided to do something small, but meaningful. Without telling Elena, he took Emma to a family photographer and arranged for a quiet photo shoot in Central Park, just the two of them. He wanted Emma to have photos that showed what was true now, not what had been missing before. They spent an afternoon running among trees, throwing leaves, and laughing so hard that Emma got the hiccups. When they were finished, she climbed onto his shoulders and whispered, "This was the best day ever." Later, when he presented the framed photos to Elena, she looked at them for a long time without saying a word. Afterward, she looked up and said, "I don't know what you're trying to become, Liam." He looked her in the eye. "I'm not trying to become anything. I'm just finally being who I should have been." She nodded slowly. "Well, you're doing a good job." They spent Thanksgiving together, just the three of them, in a kitchen filled with warmth, flour, and more burnt edges than planned. Emma gave thanks without being asked, giving thanks for the people I love most, even if they aren't perfect. Liam looked at Elena, and Elena looked at him, and neither of them laughed, because somehow those words had said everything. That night, as the fire in the fireplace died down, and the house finally grew quiet, Liam and Elena sat on the couch, sharing a blanket and a bottle of wine. The television was on low in the background, but neither of them was really watching it. After a while, Liam said, "You know, I used to think that happiness was the enemy, that it distracted me from being great. And now?" Elena asked softly. "Now I think I spent a lot of time being great, at all the wrong things." She rested her head on his shoulder, and they sat in silence, both knowing that healing did not always come with closure, and love did not always come with clarity. But if you kept showing up, day after day, it could become something solid enough to hold on to. Winter came early that year, covering the city in a curtain of frost that made the sidewalks sparkle and fogged windows with every breath. The cold had a way of bringing people together, pushing them into shared spaces and shared warmth. And for Liam, it brought a kind of intimacy he hadn't realized he was missing. Inside Elena's apartment, things were far from perfect. There were still medical bills, Elena's occasional pain, the tension of co-parenting after years of separation. But there was also laughter again, the smell of soup on the stove, and the sound of Emma's footsteps in fuzzy socks as she ran down the hallway calling for both of them. The world outside was freezing, but their small corner felt more alive than ever. Despite the progress, Liam still lived with a lingering fear that what he was building might not last. He still hadn't asked Elena for anything permanent, though the idea lived quietly in the back of his mind every time he saw her fall asleep on the couch next to him. Heard Emma draw the three of them in a single picture, without hesitation. He had not yet won a future. He was still winning the present, every single day. One evening, while Elena rested and Emma slept, Liam found himself alone in the kitchen, staring at a small velvet box he had hidden in the back of the silverware drawer. He had ordered it weeks ago, not because he had a plan, but because something inside him needed to believe that the day would come when he could offer it. The ring inside was simple. Platinum, understated, but designed with care. He still hadn't touched it beyond opening it once to make sure it was real. That night, for reasons he could not explain, he took it out again and held it in his palm. Not with the confidence of a CEO used to closing billion-dollar deals, but as a man standing on the shore of something fragile and sacred. He did not propose to her that night. He didn't even tell her about the ring. Instead, the next morning, he bundled Emma in her coat and scarf and surprised her with a visit to his office. She had never seen that side of his life before. His assistant, startled at first, quickly rearranged his day when she saw the child beside him, beaming with pride. Emma walked the halls like royalty, greeting employees, inspecting chairs, asking if there was a children's section. Liam introduced her to everyone, making sure they knew exactly who she was, with no hesitation in his voice. She was his daughter, and today, she was in charge. Later in his office, she sat behind his desk and scribbled her name on sticky notes while he watched from the doorway. At one point, she looked up and asked him, "Is this what you were always doing when you weren't calling us?" The question hit him harder than it should have. He crossed the room slowly, sat down beside her, and said softly, "Yes, I thought I was building something important, but I missed the most important part." Emma seemed to understand. Afterward, she handed him a sticky note with a crooked heart, drawn with a pink marker. "You can keep it, so you don't forget." The moment settled in him like a promise. The next big change happened even before Christmas. Elena caught the flu and it hit her harder than expected. The fever spiked, her energy collapsed, and for a week Liam became the center of the household, dealing with school, meals, the medication schedule, and the endless laundry. He did not complain. He did not waver. When Elena was finally able to sit up straight again, she found him sleeping on the floor of the room, curled up in a blanket, a notepad of appointments and reminders still clutched in his hand. She watched him sleep for a while, and something deep inside her shifted. This was no longer just a man trying to redeem himself. This was a man who had changed, cell by cell, moment by moment, into someone who stayed. On Christmas morning, Emma woke them both up before dawn. She ripped open wrapping paper and danced in her pajamas, but the most unexpected gift came in the form of a small box she handed Liam, with his name written in messy crayon letters. Inside, there was a braided string bracelet with beads that spelled out, "Dad." He did not even try to stop the tears. He put it on his wrist and promised never to take it off. That night, as the fire in the fireplace died down and the house finally grew quiet, Liam and Elena sat on the couch, sharing the last piece of pie. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The silence between them filled with the years they had missed and everything they had gotten back. Finally, Elena reached out and took his hand. "I never imagined this," she said softly. He looked at her with steady eyes. "I did. I just never thought I deserved it." She rested her head on his shoulder, and for the first time he believed she was leaning on him not out of forgiveness or pity, but out of choice. Outside, snow began to fall. Inside, something much warmer had already begun. Spring arrived slowly with a timid sunlight that stretched softly across the windowsills and melted the last signs of winter. In Elena's apartment, the air smelled of fresh flowers, hot toast, and something new. Something that felt like hope, but more grounded, more real. It had been almost 6 months since the accident, and while some parts of life had returned to a familiar rhythm, other parts had changed in ways no one had expected. Liam no longer lived in his apartment. His suits were still in his closet, but they now shared space with Emma's school art projects, mismatched mugs, and laundry baskets that overflowed at least once a week. He hadn't abandoned his business, but his priorities had shifted so completely that even his board had noticed. He still made big decisions, but now he made them after dropping Emma off at school, while waiting at ballet practice, or from the living room floor with Emma coloring beside him. He still had no official title between him and Elena, no declarations or labels, but the closeness between them had become undeniable. They moved around each other effortlessly, making each other coffee without asking, folding each other's laundry, reaching for the same blanket during movie nights. They were a family, even if no one had said the word aloud, and maybe that silence was part of what made it feel sacred. One April morning, Liam woke up before the sun came out. The city was still quiet outside, and inside the apartment was filled with the soft sounds of early life. Emma's gentle snores from down the hall, the hum of the refrigerator, the wind brushing against the windows. He sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in one hand, the small velvet box in the other. He had carried it with him all this time, waiting, not for the perfect moment, but for the right one. Later that day, he told Emma he needed her help with something important. She smiled immediately, sensing this was no ordinary task. Together they spent the afternoon baking Elena's favorite cake, burning the first attempt and laughing through the second. Emma made a card with crayons and glitter glue. She wrote, "You are my favorite person," in big, lopsided letters, and drew 3 stick figures holding hands under a sun. Liam placed the ring box inside the cake box, tied with a ribbon, and tried to calm the nerves that had been silently building in his chest all week. That night, when Elena returned home from a doctor's appointment, she was greeted by the smell of warm apples, vanilla, and cinnamon. Emma dragged her into the living room and announced, "Surprise! We made something for you." "Well, he did most of it. I just gave orders." Elena laughed, her eyes shining. She opened the box slowly, expecting a dessert, and then she froze. Inside, nestled between 2 folded napkins, was the small black box she hadn't seen before. Her hands trembled slightly as she took it out. She opened the lid and saw the ring gleaming in the soft light. Liam stood up, gently taking her hand. Emma stood beside them, holding her bunny with both arms, barely breathing. Liam did not kneel. It wasn't necessary. His voice was steady, but filled with emotion when he said, "I didn't know how to be a father. I didn't know how to be a partner. I didn't know how to stay when things got difficult. But you taught me. You both taught me. I already have everything I ever wanted in this house, in this life, with you. But I want to make it official. I want to be your family if you'll have me." Elena looked from the ring to Liam, then to Emma, who whispered, "Please say yes," and she did. Through tears, through laughter, through a kind of disbelief that this man, the one she had once walked away from, was now the one standing before her, asking them to build something permanent. She said yes. The weeks that followed were filled with joy, with planning that was not about grandeur, but about meaning. They had a small ceremony in the same backyard where Liam had once sat with Emma and promised her she would never be alone. This time, she walked down the aisle with Elena on one side and Liam on the other, her small hand in both of theirs. Friends and neighbors, nurses and teachers, even Liam's stunned business partners, gathered to witness what love looks like when it is rebuilt, brick by brick. During his vows, Liam did not speak of love in grand, poetic phrases. He simply promised to keep showing up, to keep learning, to keep earning the right to be theirs. And when they exchanged rings, Emma clapped so hard that she knocked over her juice glass and didn't even notice. That night, returning home, Elena stopped in the kitchen doorway, watching Liam and Emma wipe up the last crumbs of cake. She leaned against the doorframe with one hand on her chest, the other wrapped around a cup of tea, and thought to herself that maybe life doesn't always unfold the way you plan it. Maybe it starts with a broken heart, with silence, with mistakes. But if you listen closely, if you stay soft when you want to run, if you wait long enough, sometimes it ends in a kind of joy you never saw coming. She walked over and hugged them both, and this time neither of them let go.